Welcome, 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 everyone, to Two Guys in Hockey Talk. My name is Pavel the Cat with my wonderful, insightful co-host.
It's Evan Reynolds, Rev to you, Cat. And guys, great to be back for another week. It's a chilly one. I got my toque on. I'm in Western Canada. So for all you Southerners, enjoy the weather.
Yes, we've got a jam-packed show tonight, Season 6, Episode 12. Evan, I have my beverage. We are lucky with our guest headliner today. I'll get you to introduce him in just a sec, but remember to check us out every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Times here on Facebook, on YouTube, on all the social media platforms. We are here to bring you all the latest and greatest. Evan, let's get into it because we got a lot to cover.
All right, guys, today's guest headliner is none other than the founder and the creator of the site PuckPedia. It's everybody's new favorite website. PuckPedia is your ultimate source for all you hockey fans and professionals. It is also for salary cap information, player salaries, basic and advanced stats, draft and transaction history, news feeds, game previews, scores. You guys, it's not over yet. Even injury news. They are the home of the Agent Leaderboard. They show all contracts by the agent. They've done some incredible work. I'd like to bring to you tonight's guest headliner. Brought to you by JR Web Design. Is your website stuck in the Stone Age? Well, you need JR Web Designs. They'll craft you a website that's as awesome as our show. Well, everyone, we want to welcome PuckPedia's Hart Levine as our guest headliner tonight on Two Guys and Hockey Talk. Well, thanks for taking the time out of your very busy schedule, Hart, to join us on a Wednesday night live show podcast. Welcome.
Thanks so much for having me. Great to be with you.
We really appreciate you taking the time. We know you're a busy man, so we'll get right into it. You have become quite the popular man across the NHL and the hockey world, of course, when it have come to building PuckPedia, which I think everyone has flocked to since Cap Friendly was bought out by Washington. However, not everyone knows who Hart Levine, who you are, the man behind the magic. Maybe share with us what kind of drew you into building such a site, and were you always a fan of the game?
Yeah, I'm from Edmonton, so grew up loving hockey. Skated at 3 years old, like you have to growing up in Edmonton. And yeah, loved hockey, loved the business side of it, loved following it, and I just sort of became the guy in my group of friends and colleagues that they would ask salary cap questions and CBA questions too, and something that kind of came naturally to me, and I wanted to do something in hockey. At the time, I was thinking about the sites that were out there, and I found that they were sort of intimidating to a casual fan. To get that information, and you also have to flip between a bunch of different sites to find what you're looking for. And I thought, you know what, I'll just take a leap and I'll design and build a site that I would want to use as a fan, and then hopefully other people want to use it too. And we started building it in 2017, launched right before free agency 2018, and like some people are finding us for the first time. It's like an overnight success 7 years later, right?
That's crazy. Okay, so PuckPedia initially was built, like you said, to help understand that salary cap, calculate numbers, easier understanding. Now, this past year, you've increased the build on there. I believe you worked with some various partners to include so much more now. I know there are things like the agent tracking, PuckGM, transactions, waiver wires, you name it. Maybe could you, because a lot of people may be not as familiar or only know it as for salary cap, could you maybe tell us an idea of what they can find on PuckPedia right now?
Yeah, the one of the newest parts that we're really proud of is our PuckGM. So that's our interactive roster builder where fans can go on there and be the GM. So they can, pick a team, pick the Oilers or whatever team they want, and make signings, trades, call guys up, do buyouts. It's really basically, fans, they think they're smarter than their team's GM, right? And so to do that, you need to understand a little bit of the salary cap, and this is a way to move the pieces around and see how to make everything work. You can, publish your roster, share it, look at all the moves that you made. And actually, we're coming up pretty close to the big tournament. You can actually use it to make your four-nation face-off. What's it called? The four-nation face-off.
Four-nation,
yeah. So you can go on there, and instead of picking an NHL team, you pick a country, and then you'll get to see all the players that could possibly play for that country. You pick your team. I've seen some of the rosters out there, and the cap hits like 160 million for Team Canada. But it's just a nice way to make your roster on there. So that's something we're really proud of. We keep building out more features and tools for that. Now you can make your moves in season and see how that impacts. You can pick what day you want to make your moves, whether it's like today or before the trade deadline or on the trade deadline, and you can see how that all fits. So really proud of that. And then recently, we've added things like a draft pick value calculator. So when you want to look at trading draft picks, you can find like a fair trade match of, I want to move up 3 spots in the first round. What would that cost? Or I want to, how many third round picks would it take to get into the second round? You can use our tool for that. And there's a lot more coming as well. So really excited about the opportunity with a lot more people checking out the site, and it's allowed us to add to the team and build things out a lot quicker.
So we're glad to hear that you're getting a lot of volume going towards the site, because as you know, back in the day, you had to look up stats in a newspaper probably to be like, what
Tuesdays
did
in the Edmonton Journal? I used to do that. Yeah.
I did too. I mean, it was the way hockey fans gobbled up their information. Now with social media, they wanted instant. So with that in mind, how do you as a company get that information? Is it quickly divulged to you guys through the NHL or NHL PA, and you guys are able to update it? Because fans want to know immediately, what is that contract? How do we break it down? Draisaitl just signed. Is it long or no movement clause, no trade clause? How quickly do you get that information? And is it pretty quick in being able to get that information out onto your website?
Yeah, I think very quick. I think, in fact, often we're the place that has the information first before it's reported, especially, like the details of the contract. So it might get reported, a player signed 3 years for, or 3 years, $3 million a year. And then we're almost always the first one, and so often the only one that comes out, and it has the breakdown by year, the signing bonuses, the no trade clauses, and been very fortunate since building the site. I've been able to build out a big network of connections with teams and agencies and media and various people in the game. And so work the phones, just like a lot of people in the media work the phones to try and get the information, and try to get the news out first, and also make sure we're really accurate. I mean, that's important to us that when you go on PuckPedia, it's accurate, and we're constantly checking with league sources to make sure that the salary cap numbers are all accurate and correct. Again, confirming with the agents and team sources to make sure all the contracts are correct, both initially, but then have a bunch of checks to do later. So yeah, I think if someone comes on PuckPedia, they can feel confident that it's accurate, and also they can feel confident that we'll be the first one or very quickly to have any new information up there.
Okay, well, hopefully you don't get too many what's it called, people coming back to your GM saying, hey, that's wrong, I didn't sign him, like Lou Lamoriello or something. That's
right. Yeah. It happens sometimes. Like I do have information, and then I'm like, I put something out, and then there'll be like a denial, and I'm like, I don't think so. Like this looks right. And eventually it comes around, a few hours later, but I'm not like a traditional reporter or media, so I don't really have that training. So there's always a few nervous minutes when I put something out first, and then I'm like, oh wait, no one else has this yet. Like when it finally gets announced, or the other, like the big reporters have it, it's a little bit of like, whew, okay, like so I like to get it up first, but it's also a little stressful sometimes to be out on an island.
Okay, I just want to bring up, so earlier we had asked people this past week to be able to send stuff in, and I did get one email and a text that came in to make sure that I'd ask this question. I forgot to mention it's on there, Pavel, that I wanted to be able to ask, and that is someone that's an owner of a USHL team and someone in junior A hockey in the BCHL have asked, is there possibilities in the future of something being built for junior players?
Junior players, like a salary cap tracking, like a contract tracking site?
Yeah, contract tracking is what they were asking for.
I mean, anything's possible. We certainly have like the infrastructure for it. Like with all these things, you need to build it, and then you need to have access to the information, and you need to have a market that's going to be interested in it, right? So, I think it'd be pretty hard to track down all the intricacies of those junior contracts, but it's possible, and if there was a market for it. So same thing like with women's hockey, I get that question a lot, or some of the European leagues, certainly open to it, but I need to feel confident that I can source all the information, and if we invest the time to build it, that there'd be a market for it, right?
Well, you obviously going to spend those time, you got to be able to get paid for it some way, somehow, right? So, okay, my question I had for you was, we hear the term, and people ask us all the time about dead money on the salary cap, like for a team, dead money in the NHL. What is dead money referencing?
Well, kind of one easy way to think about it, turn the game on, you watch the team, you see live guys skating around, right? Any cap charge that team has that aren't those live bodies, that's dead money, right? So it's basically cap charges for players that aren't on the roster anymore. The most common ones would be a buyout. So if a team buys someone out, they're stuck with that cap hit. It's dead money. It's a cap charge. It's using up salary cap space, but it's not for a player that's on the roster right now. Another common example would be a retained salary trade. So if a team retains salary or cap hit on a player when they get traded, they have that cap charge. And again, they're stuck with it. That player is no longer on the roster. Couple others would be like a bonus carryover overage like the Oilers had with Connor Brown and Corey Perry. So that's a cap charge this year, almost $3.5 million. Again, they don't have, it's not for anyone on the roster right now necessarily, like for what they're doing this year. It was for something from the previous year. And then another one would be like if a player is buried in the minors, like when Jack Campbell was in the minors last year, you don't get the whole cap hit off the books. And so the remainder would be like a dead cap charge. So basically, if it's not associated with a live player skating around on your TV, that's what we'd call a dead cap charge.
Perfect.
That's pretty insightful. That's pretty good. So the other thing that people were typing in to ask us that wanted to ask you essentially is LTIR. It's a hot topic of discussion, especially around the trade deadline. And I'm looking at Vegas, and Evan will get a question into them a little bit, but kind of talk about like, what does the LTIR mean, especially when teams start a season like we just did recently, and some do not? How does that affect the salary cap allowance that can be beneficial at the trade deadline or needing that cap space?
Yeah, LTIR is one of the most complicated areas, and it's also one of the most misunderstood, right? So I'll try to give like the high level. Basically, LTIR, long-term injured reserve, it allows the team to potentially exceed the salary cap. So it doesn't take away a cap hit. Some people think like if a player's on LTIR, their cap hit just disappears. That's not correct. The injured players always count against the cap, but LTIR would allow a team to exceed the salary cap by potentially up to a player's cap hit. It depends on how much space they had when they put the player on LTIR. But let's just say, to just keep it simple, they can exceed the cap by up to the player's cap hit. So that sounds great, right? Like you get an injured player and you can exceed the cap. But if that player is going to come back, you need to get back under the salary cap when they return during the season. So we'll look at like the Oilers of Evander Kane. So they can go over the cap and use his space in LTIR, but if he's coming back, they need to get back under the cap when he's healthy. So it's not really like free space. It's kind of a temporary space. A team like Montreal that has a guy like Carey Price who's out for the season, sure, they can use that space the whole year, and that's available. But one of the consequences of LTIR is when you're in LTIR, cap space doesn't build up. Everything is just based on an annual cap. There's no prorating. Whereas the regular salary cap, it's all based on a daily calculation of 1 day's worth of each player's contract. And that's why we use the term cap space accruing, which means as you get later in the season, if you added a player, they're going to be on your roster for a shorter percentage of the season. And therefore, they're not going to use up as much cap space. So, for example, if a team has $1 million of cap space and is under the cap, they're projected to finish the year with $1 million under the cap. At the trade deadline, they could fit a player with like $4.5 million annual cap hit because they're only going to be on the roster for just over 20% of the season. But if a team is in LTIR and has $1 million of space in LTIR, they can still only add a $1 million player. So that's like the consequences of LTIR is that nothing prorates. It's just all based on annual cap hits. So you can't build up space as the season goes along. So there's a few teams, the Oilers as an example, that are kind of going in and out of LTIR this year. They don't want to be in LTIR, especially since Kane's going to come back, because now they're not building up any space that they can use later. So the goal for them is being under the cap, accruing space, building that up. And then at the deadline, hopefully that's built up to enough space that they could add a player that's got an annual cap hit of a lot more than the actual projected space that they have to finish the season with.
Okay, so, well, guys, we're going to get ready to wrap up. Hart's got some prior commitments. So Hart Levine, founder and owner of PuckPedia. But before we do, he's just touching base around some salary cap. And there was two teams we said, you got started with us on the Edmonton Oilers. We have a lot of followers of the Oilers, being that we're Western-based. And so we don't give them a lot of airtime, but tonight you guys get a little bit of airtime. All right, they're 20 to 22% of the way through their season right now, or 25 almost, let's just say. Now, they started with no one on LTIR. They've hoped to accumulate. Everyone's upset how they've gone about it and all this stuff. So my question that we keep getting from a lot of fans is they're so confused. Are you able to tell them if things stay the way they are, what kind of cap space could they have accumulated by trade deadline, or at least to the best of your ability?
The Oilers are a tricky one. So technically, they did put Evander Kane on LTIR when the season started. So
Okay.
Kane, he as a person is on LTIR, but the Oilers as a team, they've only operated in LTIR a few days of the season. So just because the player's on LTIR, if the team actually has a cap hit below the salary cap, they're not actually using LTIR, they're building up cap space. So for most of the season, that's how the Oilers have operated. But when they've had a couple injuries, they had no choice but to dip back in or call guys up, like when they called up Philp and Kajula. Now they're over the cap, they were using LTIR. When they called up Josh Brown, when Nurse got hurt, again, now they started to go into LTIR. Actually, just this afternoon, they sent Josh Brown down. That's now they're back under the cap in accruing space. So it's a tricky question for me to tell you how much space they're going to have at the end at the trade deadline, because it really depends on if they call guys up, what happens with the roster. But as of like this moment, if they didn't make any roster moves at all, they would finish the season with about 300,000 of cap space, which at the trade deadline would allow them to add about 1.4 million of annual cap. Okay. So that's the number as of today. But I would guess that they're going to maybe call up a forward if they have some of these guys, like if Arvidsson's not back and if Hyman is injured, maybe they have to call up a forward. Maybe they call Josh Brown or someone back up if they want to have a seventh defenseman. So those numbers are really going to fluctuate. And basically, the most important thing to keep in mind is if they're healthy and they can have less guys on the NHL roster, they'll build up more space. If they have injuries, they're going to chew up all their space by calling up guys. So before they started to have injuries, they were tracking to have about 4.5 million of cap space that they could add at the deadline. But again, they've called guys up. They have now they added Kapanen into the roster at $1 million, right? So that's eaten into it. So somewhere between 0 space and 4.5, I'll tell you. That's what they'll have at the trade deadline. It's a big range, and it really depends on health, and that's why teams can plan for things and plan. They didn't match Broberg and Holloway because they wanted to accrue cap space. But that's the plan, and like Mike Tyson said, everyone has the plan until you get punched in the face, right? And if injuries are like the punch in the face for a salary cap plan.
No, that's fair. And going to one of the bigger rivals for the Edmonton Oilers, the Vegas Golden Knights, we all know how contentious fans get of other opposing teams against them. Maybe perhaps kind of allude to where they're sitting at with their cap space and why they are the brunt of the aggression, specifically with Mark Stone going on LTIR every single time. And then, of course, it not translating into the postseason, given that the cap doesn't essentially count, right? Because you're going into it. Maybe talk about that team and just how people are misconstruing what Vegas is actually doing and using the cap to their benefit.
So yeah, the big complaint with Vegas is how they use that they use LTIR, and as you pointed out, in the playoffs there's no salary cap, so you can put whatever roster all the players that are under contract can play in the playoffs. And so what they've done, I think now it's probably 3 years in a row, they've had Mark Stone, and at one point it was Eichel a little bit too, but mostly Mark Stone. He gets injured. They use that LTIR space to add players. So last year it was Hurdle and Hannafin. The year before or 2 years before that was really how they added Eichel. The cup year they added Barbashev and other players, right? So the complaint is, they have this roster that's cap compliant, but only because Stone is on LTIR, and then magically he gets this great doctor that cures him as soon as the regular season ends, and he's healthy for the playoffs. And so there's no dispute that Mark Stone has injuries and back issues and everything. And you technically, like, the player cannot go on LTIR unless a doctor signs off that he's expected to be out a certain period of time. And, doctors don't want to lose their license by signing something. So there's
10 games or 10 games or 24 days.
Both. It has to be 10 games and 24 days.
And 24. Okay. Yeah.
So, and in the Vegas case, like, because he was going to be out after the deadline, and so that would mean they couldn't make a trade to get compliant. The doctors are signing off he's actually going to be out through the regular season, right? Because it's clear that they wouldn't be able to activate him. So the question isn't like, does he qualify for LTIR? The question is just around the timing and, like, should he have to be activated and cap compliant before the end of the regular season to play in the playoffs? Or should there be some sort of salary cap in the playoffs? That's always the debate with them. Their cap space right now, they're actually similar to the Oilers. They were under the cap. They had some injuries. Now they put a player on LTIR, and so they actually have dipped into LTIR right now as of today. So, again, it will really depend. Can they get guys healthy and get back under the cap? As of right now, they have $1 million of cap space, but that's either going to go down to like 0 if they have to leave LTIR but they can't send more guys down, or maybe they can get healthy and send a few of these extra bodies down and accrue some cap space. So it really is a moving target based on based on health. There's some teams that seem like they don't have a lot of roster moves in a season, and it's because they don't have a lot of injuries, and that's easy. But teams that are close to the cap or that have some injuries, it can really fluctuate their cap space.
That's crazy.
Before Evan gets his final thoughts, I think if people look at Toronto's salary cap, I think last year or the year before, they were the highest over the cap with LTR, which included Jake Muzzin, Matt Murray, and a few others, and they were like higher than Vegas. So this
year it's Washington. Washington right now is $101 million cap hit, and the salary cap is $88 million, right? And that's because they have Backstrom and Oshie. They just put Sonny Milano on LTIR. So that's why a team can get over 101 million, which is pretty amazing on an $88 million cap.
Wow. Well, Hart, man, we want to honor your time tonight. Maybe we'll try and get you back on. We'll see what's happening by the time playoffs come. Definitely appreciate the time. Appreciate all the work you're doing at PuckPedia. And by the way, we're going to do a Four Nations piece ourselves next week. We're going to have a competition. The lowest contracted salary cap teams going into the Four Nations. Pavel and I are going to have a face-off. We'll post it. I'll send it to you. See what we were able to get up.
Awesome. Looking forward to it. Thanks so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
Excellent,
we
guys.
Appreciate you coming on. Sorry, go ahead, Evan.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, guys, Hart Levine, owner of PuckPedia. He runs the site. Go check it out. Again, have a great week, and cheers.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Guest headliner, brought to you by JR Web Design. Is your website stuck in the Stone Age? Well, you need JR Web Designs. They'll craft you a website that's as awesome as our show. So get this, Pavel. You had no idea I was lining you up. We're going to send it to Hart now, our competition. So now we have to actually answer and be accountable. So we have to see. So everyone, you got to get this. What I'm doing, I just told Pavel before the show started, he's got a lot of work to do this week. He's going to go on to PuckPedia. He's going to go into PuckGM and make a Four Nations team for all four teams. And he is going to find the best team at the lowest salary cap. And then we're going to post it. And you guys, we're going to post it here. And then we're going to throw it up on our social media. And you guys are going to judge in a poll who has the better rosters for all four teams based on two things: lowest salary with the best players still. So this will be a challenge. I'm excited about this one.
This will be fun. It's going to be a quick little good homework assignment for me. So keep me busy. But we got a lot to get to, Evan. There's a lot of news happening on the NHL. Where did you want to get started?
Why don't we move over to where Hart finished off at with the Washington Capitals? By the way, we're going to get into more detail, but Hart had to get going, so we didn't get into all the talk. So Washington Capitals had the highest cap hit. Interesting enough. Pavel, so how did you – I said they wouldn't make the playoffs, and what did you say to start the year about the Washington Capitals?
I said they were going to be dead last in the Metro. That's how bad I am. And this is the thing with predictions. They're all over the place. That's why I'm terrible and I don't like making them, but here it is.
Okay, so they're tied for second overall, only behind Winnipeg. They're tied for second. They're 1/5 of the season. They're sitting behind the record-breaking, by the way, Winnipeg Jets right now, who have never started a season like this. I mean, they're going to beat Boston's all-time record if they keep this up. And on top of this, you got the ageless wonder, Alexander Ovechkin, who's becoming Crosby-esque as that ageless wonder. He's 28 goals from surpassing the great one.
He's actually less, Evan. He's 27 from surpassing, 26 from tying.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Yeah, that was my before the game the other day. So I thought it was 26 to tie, 27 to surpass at the time. Okay. Now, get this. If he scores one goal every second game, just an approximate, he's going to pass and move into the history books this season, in his 20th season. And think about it. That team, Pavel, also has Dylan Strome. I just want to take a few minutes and talk about this. Dylan Strome, I loved him coming out of Erie, watching him play with Connor McDavid, Connor Brown. I'm trying to remember. They had Alex DeBrincat. I mean, you name it. That team was loaded with some NHL future.
Mitch Marner was on that team, wasn't he?
No. Mitch Marner was a London Knight. London Knights, which is another team franchise we'll talk about some other time. But anyway, Dylan Strome, his previous best was last year at 67 points. He had one better points per game season in Chicago his first year. But the thing is he was always been injuries he's been dealing with. And it's hard, as we heard from Scott Glennie when he came on, former first-round draft pick, I think 7 overall. He talked about injuries really delay you and wreck your career. Kyle Rossiter's talked about that. Robbie Schremp, some of the former guys that have been on. Now, listen to this. He's on pace for 127 points, 100 assists this season. Now, I don't think he's going to reach 100 assists, but I could see him reaching 100 points, even if he slows down on his rate to, like, say, 0.9 points per game. And playing with Ovechkin right now, all those guys are just playing so well. I mean, how can you not rave on right now about the Washington Capitals?
Yeah, they're going hard. They're buying into Spencer Carberry's system. The moves they made in the offseason were interesting, but they've paid off. Logan Thompson has been playing well. They really have a 1A, 1B situation with him and Charles Lindgren. It looks like on defense, Rasmus Sandin has really found his game, being able to play there. Jacob Chikrin coming over, really having a breakout season again after struggling in Ottawa, which was always a questionable trade for Ottawa. I don't know why they did it after acquiring him.
Oh, I know, right?
He's a really good defenseman. They're playing well. They're firing on all cylinders. Now, Ovechkin is injured a little bit week to week, as they're saying, with that knee on knee, or technically it was ankle with Jack McBain with Utah. But essentially, the team is going. They're playing hard, and I'm looking forward to seeing what they can do, because last year they were minus 37 and they got into the playoffs, one of the worst negative numbers. So who knows what will happen this year, especially given what the Metro is and the team's vying for the East there. But
we were saying they can just play a little over 500% hockey. If they play 55% hockey the rest of the way, they're making a wild card minimum. I mean,
100%.
That's good news for Washington.
Now, speaking of injuries, it was announced today, it kind of got out in the reporting that Austin Matthews, captain of the Toronto Maple Leafs, has headed over to Germany, Munich, Germany, to see a doctor that he's seen before, just to get an evaluation. Now, originally, and the comments made by GM Brad Treliving, it's nothing. It's just a checkup. He's fine. The timeline's still good. It's been a few weeks now. I think it's been 2.5 to 3 weeks now of him missing. Now, the one good thing for Toronto is that they have been able to play well without him. A lot of their other top guys, Mitch Marner especially, that's why I had him on my mind, has stepped up and really played well and is in a contract year. John Tavares playing after dealing with that sickness at the beginning of the year. But Evan, this seems pretty serious to me. I think they're downplaying it. But when they went from, well, it's, day to day, then week to week, and, it's getting into a month now.
Yeah.
He's been out. And you're seeing a specialist in Germany. Don't get me wrong. You go and get the best help that you can, right? Jack Eichel did it for his neck. But this is getting into what's going on territory with Matthews. Is there something nagging or lingering happening? Because we want to see that superstar back on the ice, especially if you want, or the U.S. players want him for the Four Nations Cup, because he's going to be a big factor, if not on that top line there.
Yeah.
But your thoughts?
Well, so first of all, you guys need to know we are not downplaying anything about Matthews as a person or as a hockey player. This is about the news and what's being delivered and what they're saying compared to what we're seeing. So as Pavel just mentioned, he's talking about Jack Eichel, who has serious career-ending injury, doing whatever he has to. And we're talking about, just minor injury, just day-to-day. Hey, it's like, hey, man, hey, dude, it's okay, everyone. Hey, hose heads, you guys are a bunch of hose heads out there in the hockey world. You don't know nothing. Well, we do. Number one, there's nothing to go help him on this continent of North America, that you need to leave the continent for a minor injury to travel 8 hours on, by the way, a commercial flight of all. How did that not get out there too? I was amazed when I heard this. So, I mean, obviously no one going to Germany had an idea who Matthews is. That's how much Germans pay attention to Toronto. Sorry, guys. It's just, they never got out there. So he goes to Germany, and I'm hoping for him this is all good and he makes this work. But what I'm looking at is saying, why don't you just be a little more honest? Like, don't call it minor. It's ridiculous how stupid these teams think that fans and media, anyone outside of that team or outside of the league are. Like the way they talk about refs and the way they talk about injuries. And if you don't want to discuss it, just say we're not discussing it. If you don't want to say it's minor, but you don't want to say it's major, just don't discuss it. Let people speculate on their own, because now you look like a fool in the eyes of the fans and everybody else. It's just like, this is not small. There's no way it's small. Otherwise, this is such an overreaction if this is just minor.
100%. Now, speaking of teams that have their own concerns, the Pittsburgh Penguins, it sounds like the numbers for attendance has been dropping a little bit. Now, we all know that 50% of revenue for most teams in the NHL is gate driven, right? So people coming in buying tickets. And you still have some big names. You have Malkin there. You have Crosby, one of the best in the game. However, the team has struggled, Evan. We talked about this last episode. And Kyle, we see your question about the Bruins. We'll get into it a little bit later. But really, how do you sell people on the idea? Are you selling on a rebuild, or are you like on hope, or are you selling to win, as people like to say? It's hard to kind of see how Kyle Dubas corrects this, because he was brought in there with that 7-year contract to rebuild, but you also want to contend. Now, they've missed the playoffs the last 2 years, but only by a few points. Honestly, this year it's been tough. And what has been reported out of Pittsburgh is that beyond Crosby, everyone is open for business potentially. Now, that doesn't mean that they'll get traded. That being said, there's been a lot of rumblings from Biz Nasty, Paul Bissonnette, about him Crosby going to Colorado, even tweeting an AI image of Sid in his Colorado uniform, which looked great. And I can't imagine how wild that would be if he went there for 1 year to win. Of course, we talked about this last week. You made your thoughts known. You guys can go back and watch. But what does Pittsburgh do, Evan? Do they pivot? Because they're probably looking at Washington and saying, what the heck? Why can't we be like Washington right now? What's going on?
Yeah. And this is kind of an endless circle that we're on, because no one can read Dubas's mind or where he's going or what he's doing. And no one understood it in Toronto, which is one of the reasons, obviously, why Shanahan moved him out, with everything. And he tries his old boys club, people he's familiar with around it. But you know what? Let's face it. You have some of the most exciting players to go watch. So fans dwindling is a concern to me. It doesn't matter whether they're rebuilding, retooling, whether if they think they can trade their way out of this, stick around, enjoy the excitement. This is why your team has won for 20 years. You've had a winning tradition amongst everyone else. I am a fan of the Penguins. They're my second most favorite team to watch over the decades. Now, fans saying, oh, the team's struggling, talk to Edmonton. Talk to Buffalo. Talk to Columbus. Talk to Toronto. There are so many. Minnesota. There is teams. Here's the thing. You find something to be excited about, whether it's a player's skill on the ice, whether it's a tough, rugged game, whether you enjoy the idea. If it's all about a cup or bust, and you're going to bust as in you're not going to put out your money, I get it. It's expensive, but you would go if they're winning. So don't give me that excuse. I get the odd game you might not go and you'll give your tickets away if you own them. But I just want to say this. Let's go back in history. That team had low attendance until Mario Lemieux came in. That team brought up their attendance. And when they started winning and when they got into winning some cups, that started changing. So when the team was winning with Lemieux, they did great. Then they started fading after Yager was gone and things started changing and Lemieux left and there was all this stuff that happened, and the team started dwindling to the point it was almost bought by Jim Basile, who actually built the BlackBerry, who was supposed to be the iPhone of the future. And Jim Basile was going to move the team from Pittsburgh to Hamilton. It was a done deal. Bettman and Toronto, they stopped the deal. They said no, and Lemieux came along, and part of his funds that they owed him, they gave to him, and he took ownership with another group, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, Then they suck for a while. They're still struggling with attendance. They get Crosby, and they build up for the last 20 years. Now, you still have him. You still have Malkin. You still have Letang. Like or dislike Carlson, I actually talked to a pro scout and someone that's in director of player development on another team, and they said and actually someone else deal is going to have him on Team Sweden, because some people are saying they wish they didn't do it, and they're saying you need to watch his game more carefully. Much more happens. It's like an Evan Bouchard idea with him on the ice. It's not as bad as you actually think. So anyway, I don't know, man. Around the Pittsburgh Penguins, I would just say, fans, be more patient. Enjoy what you got. It might be another 2 years until you get out of this. It might be a 5-7 year rebuild. But maybe make a decision. You're either going to push hard to get out of this, or you're just going to rebuild like Chicago and other teams.
And one thing, because if this felt like a bit of a rant, but we're going to get into your rant right away here. The rumblings is that Mike Sullivan's not going anywhere, and we'll get into head coaches in the NHL, but it sounds like the rapport between Sullivan and Crosby, which is first and foremost the important person you want to have a good rapport with, is good. They like each other. Now, that being said, by tonight, there could be one phone call could be made and anything could change. However, I think Sullivan is safe for the time being. I think he'll play out the year and they'll reassess to see where they're at, because he's still a coveted coach. Yeah. And there's not much out there right now that you can get to replace what he's going to do with that roster. And I think the biggest question is that roster and how are you going to shake things up? So,
yeah. And I last thing to say to that, I still think he's gone this season, but Kyle has to make a decision of what he's really doing before he makes the move, because you can't advertise a new coach to come in until you know exactly what your strategy and your plan is. So, All right, guys. Hey, Kyle, you've been around waiting. If you're still there, there's some of you been wanting to. We have not had a rant of the night for quite a while. So if you are, hang in. We got rant of the night. PuckPedia brings you
Rant of the Night.
Calling all hockey fans, stay on top of your game with PuckPedia. It's the ultimate source for NHL salary cap information. Okay, I want to talk about my rant. You thought I rant about the Penguins? Nobody. I want to rant about the Boston Bruins. Since June, they traded away Allmark before signing Swagman. Might as well call him Swagman because he was moving so much swag. Believe me, I believe they lost $2 million that they could have signed him to less per season if they had done it while they had Allmark, because they could have went with Allmark instead of went with Swayman, hence keep the lower, but they didn't do it. They didn't do their job. Also, late signing after camp into the season they had with Swayman, so which affected the camp. They let it all go personal in public. I tried to defend you guys. I can't anymore. I can't play devil's advocate. You let DeBrusque go. Grzelcyk, you let Heine go, you let JVR, you let Pat Maroon. You made all these character guys walk. You paid $7.775 million a year for Elias Lindholm, who averages 0.68 points a game and has been on the decline of that. He's got 7 more years of that cap. You took Zadorov, who scores 0.23 points per game. He's paid $5 million a year. So you have right there between those two players almost $13 million tied up per year in your cap. And so he's signed for the next 6 years. Both those guys are Bruins, and they will be with you till 2030, 2031. Both signed at 29 years of age. Now, let's go back a little further. My rant's not over. They fired Cassidy, who had a 67% winning record, and then Jim Montgomery now, who has a 71.5% winning record with your team. They have fired him. Now, in the year Cassidy was with them, he gave them the second best record in club history. Montgomery led the Bruins to the best record not only in club history, but NHL history. Cassidy won a Jack Adams in 2020 with the Bruins, and he was a finalist, by the way, with other teams 2 years before that. Montgomery won a Jack Adams in 2023. His teams, by the way, have never missed the playoffs. By the way, was there someone around in around 20 years ago? I mean, I got to go back. Joe Thornton, Tyler Seguin, Phil Kessel, all those guys are not with the team who could have been. Who is there? Someone named Cam Neely. Guys, the Bruins suck because your president of hockey operations sucks, and so does your GM Sweeney. You got to remove them from the top. And I'm sorry, you don't bring in Joe Sacco, who has less than a 60% winning career record as a replacement coach.
Yeah. Is that the rant? I agree. I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. Kind of a few factors to add to it. The Swayman saga got out pretty badly, and the trade itself with Linus Ullmark, trading him away ahead of time. Now, Korpisalo has been better than Swayman thus far, but I think the public scrutiny or debate about that signing didn't do Boston any favors. And normally, no team wants that to be public. But Boston is very secretive about their signings and about their paperwork and business. And this really got out and it really hurt them. The one question I have, Evan, and you kind of alluded to it, who's their number one center? Is it Elias Lindholm? I don't think he's the number one center. He was perfect with what he did in not only Vancouver last season, but also when he was a little bit younger. He was playing with great wingers with Johnny Gaudreau and Matthew Tkachuk in Calgary. He played on that role, and he was able to get 70-plus points. He's not that guy anymore, and he's struggling. He's more a defensive center. You think of a Ryan Nugent-Hopkins style. That's what he brings to the table. And he's a 1B. Now, he is, I think, 52 or 53% on the face-off dot this year, but you need more. So what else you have? You have Pavel Zacha. Okay. He's done what he can. Brad Marchand, getting a little bit older, contract year. What's he going to bring? And of course, Father Time, unlike Ovechkin, he's going to slow down a bit, right? Like he's not going to produce at the same amount. I don't blame Montgomery about this. The one thing I will say for Boston is they do not tolerate mediocrity, and I believe they're 8-9-3 so far. So even though they're technically in a playoff spot, their playoff percentage is a little bit less. However, I really think, and Kyle makes a point, they have not dealt with Bergeron leaving as well as David Krejci. They have lost that 1-2 punch where they had that record season, and I think that's really hurt that team. And I agree with you. For some reason, Cam Neely seems like an untouchable, and I don't know why. And Don Sweeney the same way. So we'll see what happens, especially since I believe Don Sweeney is going to be part of, is it Canada, the Team Canada or Team US, one of the teams.
I think it was USA.
One of the teams.
Kyle, you know.
So yeah, essentially, and Patrick says, give me Montgomery for Torts right now. He's going to get a job right away. Dude, just watch. He's not going to stay, he's not going to stay gone for a while. But I think Boston needs to fix their roster, and I agree with you. What are they doing? Now, granted, Hampus Lindholm is injured. What do you do there? Because he is a threat on the back end there. But who's scoring the other points? Charlie McAvoy. Where is he coming from? And you pick up David Kastelik or Mark Kastelik, I think it was, in that trade for Swayman.
Yeah,
he's a bottom pairing guy, but he's playing in the top 6, right? Who is your center? Maybe they thought they can get Draisaitl. Who knows, right? Maybe they thought that they can get him, but I don't know. Boston has a lot of questions, but
yeah, and it's tough, right? Just because, and you Bruins fans or fans even that, that when you get in these boats right now, I mean, you know what? It may not be long away that you got some more teams looking at this. I mean, Toronto has been trying to figure it out. There's some teams that look like they're getting better and don't. Yes, those coaches didn't get them through the top, but when does it fall on the guys that have been there forever? I am so tired of the coaching carousel where coaches, like, how much does a coach really make a difference? We have talked to professional players from NHL. We have talked to coaching through juniors. We talked to coaches themselves out of the NHL, and they will tell you every time the difference is minute. Systems are minute. It's all about the head and the game and to let the players know this is serious. You're next. Well, when is the GM next? When is the president of hockey operations next? I mean, this is frustrating as anything. And I'm not even a major fan of the Bruins. And I feel for Bruins fans right now because you were so close of that upper echelon. So close. It's a tough day in the neighborhood. tough day in the neighborhood. All right, why don't we make a move? We're going to give you guys some updates. Let's go over right now into our REVs top 15 and talk about some of the junior.
REVs top 15.
Brought to you by the electronic hard rock band Penny Billionaires. Look for them wherever you find your music.
So before you get to your thing, it's good music. Patrick says, as a Philly boy being here, the franchise has never known how to build the main piece outside of Lindros, and we missed the boat on Giroux. Giroux has really also played well in Ottawa. He's been a bit of a bright spot for that team again, with who's struggling again this November. But yeah, Philadelphia also goes through these ebbs and flows. It's tough not only to make the playoffs, Evan, it's also tough to to win in the postseason. So good on those teams that are able to go far and go to the distance, like a Pittsburgh, like in Tampa Bay, and now we've seen like the Florida Panthers. And Kyle says, "Good rant, good." Don't encourage him, Kyle. Go ahead, get into your Rev top 15.
Well, I wanted to get in my Revs top 15, but you missed my jive, so
REVs top 15.
brought to you by the electronic hard rock band Penny Billionaires. Look for them wherever you find your music. Well, since I was so rudely cut off, and look at that.
I saw you.
He wants to jump in again.
Getting the people to talk, to share their thoughts.
Yeah, well, you can get them back on NHL News after I get done this part. Okay, guys. Anyway, this will be a quick piece. We don't need to spend a lot of time. Quick updates. We like to keep you updated. We had a lot of NHL talk. Just two things around the rink and Revs that we're going to chat in. No hockey history tonight, but update you. So right now, my 15 going into the season, that is different than everyone else. No one had Michael Misa. I had him at number 2. Still have James Higgins at number 1. Porter Mortone, I have at 3. Roger McQueen, I have him at number 4. However, very concerned how this injury is going to affect him when he comes back. And then I did have, and I haven't given this to you, number 5 officially, Matthew Schaefer of the Erie Otters. So let me quickly tap in on what's been happening on these guys. So James, now in the last 2 games this week, he has 2 points. They're both assists. I've had conversations with some in elite prospects with some of the scouts this actually past week because I'm confused. I'm struggling with James getting like 1 goal. He is like a 3% scoring percentage. He's not getting enough shots on goal. His first season with all the goals, he had like 20+% shooting percentage. It was not sustainable. It came down, but then it's like, well, then why do we say he's a goal scorer when he's not? It goes both ways. It levels out. And even if he comes back, I'm starting to see him drop. And I've said it, I'm going to give him until the actual Christmas break and keep him in first no matter what. But he's going to have to prove something. Michael Misa, man, the guy is still on the chair. So 3 games since last week. In 3 games, he's got 7 points. He's over 2 points a game. He is not slowing down. We got beeping going on. My buddy on the other end, I know what you're doing there, dude. You're just kind of annoying me. All right, so he's got 21 games, 23 goals, 19 assists, and 42 points. Michael Misa is putting himself in a position for me to be moved into the first place ranked overall. It could be depending on the team, but he's going 1A, 1B by the new year if things don't change here. Porter Mortone, 5 points his last 2 games. Same thing. The guy's not slowing down. Roger McQueen has not played. And Matthew Schaefer, now he's just starting. He had a few games because of injury. He's got 11 games in now, and he's starting back. He's got 15 points in 11. Strong. He looked credible in the Hlinka. And I do want to just point out, we obviously it's almost hard for me not to, Pavel, to talk about draft year 2 out. The number 1 projected overall is Gavin McKenna, coming in not till 2026. And the guy had 5 points in his last 2 games. He's sitting number 1 in the CHL across at 16 years old. He's leading 18, 19, and 20-year-olds. And he has 44 points in 22 games. He is literally 2 points a game. This guy is amazing. And you got to see his two-way game. Every game, there's something. He's top 2-star every game. So having said that, if I gave them to you in my draft order, every week I like to give you a little mock draft. The Blackhawks would get first overall James Hagan if the season ended right now. They're going to get a top 3 this year. They're going to be nuts next year. I say if I'm a Blackhawk fan, blow it this year and next. You might as well, and just kind of deal with whatever the aftermath. The Predators are number 2 overall, the worst team. That gives them Michael Misa. There you go, Stamkos. There you go, Marcia Show. You have guys to play with. The Sharks, they're going to love it. They get big Porter Martone, who will fit perfectly in with Will Smith, Macklin Celebrini. Montreal, you've been asking for him. You get Roger McQueen, the big giant guy, because you got a lot of shorties. And Detroit, you bring in Matthew Schaefer, who I think would be a great player for someone like Stevie Yzerman to have in place. That's it for my Revs Top 15.
Revs Top 15.
Brought to you by the electronic hard rock band Penny Billionaires. Look for them wherever you find your music.
Okay, excellent thoughts there, Evan. Although I will say, and maybe we can get some Detroit fans telling us what is going on with the Yzerman plan. I know we talked about it a little bit a few weeks back, but I don't know if Detroit wants to be in the bottom 5, bottom 10 again this year. I think they're trying to make a push for the playoffs. And what was it last year? They were just a few points behind Washington to not make it. So it's interesting. Now, Patrick says we haven't seen the Cup since Bobby Clark and Bernie Parent. We are the Cleveland Browns of the NHL. I don't know. There's a few other teams that probably can vow for that thing, but you guys can allude to which team that would be. Now, a few other things in NHL news.
Can I say something? Just for that's Patrick, right? That was talking. Yeah. Patrick, think about Oliver Bonk and Denver Barkley over there in London. 2 incredibly good prospects that you have coming in, especially Denver Barkley. And then don't forget about the Jet. The Jet didn't need to be sent. He'd probably be your 3rd best player right now. So they're giving them some time to build in. And chances are they're going to drop in the standings. You're still going to get a top 15. This is a good year. Top 15 is not going to be too bad. So bear with it. I know it's tough, but you never know. This could be a good year that you're going to benefit. And Mishkov, long as he can keep his confidence up, I mean, you got a good solid season of him having to learn defense as well.
100%. Now, we do just want to cover 2 more things before we get to around the rink. One thing is that JT Miller has taken an indefinite leave from the Vancouver Canucks, and the team has granted him that. There's been a lot of random speculation, which I haven't liked some of the things that have been shared on Twitter/X. My understanding on Donnie and Diwali, who kind of do the Vancouver radio host their show, they kind of talked about injury. It's something really nagging him. Then he's had a hard time. We just want to respect his privacy. Let him kind of figure it out. He's a big part of that team, not only leadership team, but also on the ice in terms of being a top 6 producer, forward, things of that nature. He's one of those, I don't want to say underrated because people know what he is and he's paid very well for it, but I think people don't realize how much of an influence and power he has in that locker room and on the ice when he's there. And he can produce. He's had a pretty good career so far and become really a staple of that Vancouver franchise so far.
Well, he's the top 15, at least offensive player in the league, right? So, and I like to say this, just like Bedard and the whole Corey Perry and mom stuff, and I'm not going to mention what was actually said about this. I have had a few people. I do think I know what it is, and from what I'm understanding, I just want to tell you, I don't think it's injury. It is personal, but I want you to know that from what I'm hearing, this has nothing to do with anything he's done wrong. So that's very important. Allow him his space to be able to get back, get his mind in the right place, to come back strong. Honor that without speculating what it is. If you know, that's fine, but just don't go on social media circles and start, going off and making statements as if it's true. That's the thing, because even what I'm hearing, I'm 90% sure, but that doesn't even mean I'm right. That could also be wrong. So honor that, right? So, hey, we talked about Edmonton earlier. There has been some discussion around Edmonton, a little bit more for you fans of the Edmonton Oilers. You want to be a cup contender. I'm worried about that, but I'm not going to go into deep. We don't have time to talk about are they a cup contender. But what we do want to talk about is there's a lot of speculation going around right now around the Oilers when it comes to bringing in a top 4 D-man top four, which they should have had going into the season.
Well, they did have it. They had two guys, and they got rid of them both. They lost them both, essentially. So they had CC and they had Broberg.
Oh, okay. CC was not a top four though in most people's minds. I got what you said. He played the role.
Get to the Stanley Cup final, and he's a right-hand shot defenseman.
I agree.
I think he was.
And they could have kept him, but they wanted that cap space. Which
even if you didn't have him, you could have had Broberg take that next step, and you chose not.
But again, let's be fair on the Broberg piece. Are you going to pay that kind of money for the guy in 2 years like they paid? No, you don't match it. The guy wanted out. He'd already made his bed.
Sure, but you could have signed and trade. You could have signed and trade. This is on the team.
No, you don't know. You don't know you could sign and trade. That's not guaranteed. That's very difficult to do.
Yes, it is, because there was a lot of teams interested. It wasn't just St. Louis that wanted him. He was
guys,
a coveted pick. I disagree.
I think we should give Pavel his insider trademark again, because somehow he knows there was a sign and trade available, and teams will do it, and he disagrees. So I will leave it at that.
There could have been a partner to trade with after you sign him for 2 years, like you did some other players, like you did at Bouchard.
How do you know it wasn't actually investigated? Anyway, I leave that to the side.
Because it was revealed that he wasn't approached by the team, and the agent essentially came out and said nothing was presented to them.
That agent
was presented.
Do you know who that agent is? How many reps they have? Guys, go to PuckPedia, find the agent for Broberg, look at his total salary contracts and how much money he manages and how many players. You can go to puckpedia.com.
You got to start somewhere.
And exactly. And those guys don't have as many because there's a reason. He is not he's not one of my favorite agents, and I struggle with him.
That's fair.
I don't.
We're getting off topic.
I don't believe he's honest. Yeah, but you wanted to argue the fact that I was arguing, so now we're arguing back and forth.
So arguing to further arguing.
So right now there is rumors of different players out there. I'm just going to share some of the circles. You guys have heard a whole bunch of names. So what have you heard before I get into the ones that I've heard?
So I haven't heard names specifically. What I can say is, you asked earlier some names potentially that could be of interest to the Oilers that could fill that role, who can play both on the right and or the left. They don't necessarily need to be right-handed, right? They're kind of being able to be comfortable on both sides.
And Oilers now, Bob Stauffer actually even brought that up in his tweets, who's right connected with the team. Correct.
So two names that I'm going to throw out there that potentially could be. Now, again, this is just speculation on my part. This is nothing that I have, heard. Cam Fowler from the Anaheim Mighty Ducks. He's a veteran there, older guy, leadership, has played quite a bit. He's a right-hand D. Keep an eye on him. He's in the last year of his contract. He could potentially be on the trade block, especially since Anaheim is still technically rebuilding. The other name that's a bit of a long shot, but again, it's not out of the realm of possibility, and they're going to have a lot of contracts to deal with themselves, is Ryan Lindgren of the New York Rangers, because he is up again, and the Rangers have some big names to sign, including Shesterkin and Lafreniere. And you also got Keandre Miller coming up, who is your top right-handed guy there. Although I think it was Hito that's injured right now, but they've got some big signings to do. They may trade him away. Now, granted, Ryan Lindgren has been a perfect fit for the Rangers, but you can't keep everybody under the cap.
Yeah. And Miller's staying there. You know that. They're not letting Miller go. So,
You're keeping Shesterkin. You're most likely keeping Lafreniere. What if Lindgren's on the block?
Okay. So Connor Murphy's been mentioned in the Blackhawks. I don't think he's an upgrade on what they got at all. Cam Fowler has been mentioned in previous weeks. Not sure how much heat is on that one right now, but he has left, but can play the right, as we talked about, but he has experience. And maybe he comes back for a small contract next year to play, right, for another year or two. That was a player they liked in his draft year, dating back, but he was drafted the same year as Taylor Hall. I actually rated them that year. And now the Marcus Patterson, who actually is over in Pittsburgh, because remember what happens. Vancouver is the most sought at after him, though. So they likely have more to offer than the Oilers. So I don't think they have a chance. Now, there has been talk and speculation. Friedman has also said that they have been inquiring with Columbus. People are believing that it could be Jiricek, who's in problems and being sent down right now, David Jiricek, and also Ivan Provorov. And I'm hearing more on Ivan Provorov, problem that they're dealing with if they were to get this. Who do you give up? What do you get for future prospects? How do you manage the cap space and all those things? So interesting. I just heard something 2 hours before we went on that I saw someone. At first, I thought it was speculation. I'm looking who it is. It's an interesting source to actually speculate, but I'm going to run with the idea, not that it actually is that the Oilers have been interested in looking at potentially a bigger trade with Columbus for Jiricek and Provorov in a larger trade to send 2 defensemen and a draft pick and a prospect back in return. No idea what that is. You'd have to think money for money, so you'd have to start speculating. You want to do that, folks, go to PuckPedia and you can figure it out. So it's going to be an interesting next little run here because, we don't have news yet on things. Hyman's expected back, but you got Nurse out. You're already struggling on that right side on that D. You're barely over 500. You got to start winning now. Now's the time last year when they started moving forward. I don't know, man.
Yep, it will be definitely interesting to see what they do because they really do need to make a move. They did pick up Kasperi Kapanen off of waivers from St. Louis, who has only got a goal in 10 games. And so I wonder if this is kind of a throwback shade for the offer sheets in the summer. So we'll see if he gets a chance or if he's part of a different trade or a bigger deal, or if he gets dropped down to Bakersfield just to get a conditioning stint there. Because it sounds like Victor Arvidsson's out for a little bit longer. They need him. I agree. I think they need to do something, but I really think, Evan, and I know defense is always something, a point of a question here in Edmonton. I would say, what is the goaltending like? Because I don't know if Stuart Skinner and Calvin Pickard can replicate last year. And for all the flaws that Pickard has, he is doing what he needs to do as a backup goaltender. I think Skinner needs to find his game. And after you alluded to his kind of movements a few episodes back, I think it was episode 7 or 8, I kind of watched that in the last few games, and I agree. His movements a little bit sluggish and slow, and I think that's something that needs to be worked on. And I don't know how you – like, this is a quick, easy fix. You can always fix little techniques, right? But is it good enough to salvage and save the season? So – we are coming up to American Thanksgiving. They're kind of in a playoff spot, so you should be good. But you start looking at GMs who maybe want to pull the trigger on something, and you may see some more changes. Now, granted, the Columbus thing, and you guys can elude us if you're tuning in for Columbus or you're fans of the team. I believe when they picked up Robbie Fabry from Nashville off of waivers, that kind of dropped Jiricek out of that lineup. Because that gives them a bit more depth. Now, you can never go wrong with too much depth, but definitely keep an eye on it. And the other team, Evan, I would always keep an eye out is Ottawa. I know Steve Staios wants to always push for a playoff spot, but if this is not their year and Ottawa struggles again, what if they do something there with that team?
Yeah, exactly. All right, guys. Hey, just remember every Wednesday night, 7 p.m. We're going to go. We have one last episode we got to touch in on because it's relevant information in minor hockey and junior hockey. But every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, we go live 7 to 8 plus overtime. 2 Guys in Overtime comes right after 2 Guys in Hockey Talk. I definitely need to get a little segment bar that just cuts in automatically. 2 Guys in Overtime. But make sure you join us. Follow us also on all of our social media. One of the places is through X at hockey_2, or you can follow me at RevNev. And I'd like to mention some of the stuff I talked about Skinner and someone else, those lateral movements, all the things I mentioned. I do have them up there on my X feeds. If you go follow some of my posts that I made, and you will see that I did mention there's no way the Oilers are moving off Skinner. He is it. They're going to live or die with this guy for at least this year and next year. It's a minimum that they are not moving, and not because of salary cap, not because they can't move him, but because they just won't do it. They are so dedicated. And I disagree. I think that they are wrecking the prime years of McDavid and Dry. Those guys can perform all they want, but if you let one bad goal in, no minimum, one bad goal every single game, and if you don't give confidence to your team that they feel like they don't have to come back and play defense all the time, they can actually take some chances, and it's a sad moment. So, but let's go. I got some information I want to be able to share. Very interesting around the BCHL and USHL transfer over to this. So let's go to Around the Rink.
If you're a fan of hard-hitting, exciting hockey, catch the Kalkaska Battlers.
Around the Rink
Is brought to you by the Kalkaska Battlers. Let them be your local hockey heroes.
Hey, man, interesting. I don't know how much you got. Kalkaska has been doing well this year, buddy.
Yes. Yeah. I've kept in on the website going weekly just to check in, and I've enjoyed. I've enjoyed seeing some of the scores that they've been putting up.
Well, we're going to be able to get the coach and one of the players on in January, February here, guys. So they come from the American Premier Hockey League. They are a semi-pro team. All right. We had some stuff I just wanted to mention last week, but I didn't get to it. Doesn't really matter because now it carries over. So everyone, we've been talking lots. It's not news. If not, please go read all our other stuff. Too much to go back on. There's been some changes with the NCAA now allowing major minor hockey, which is the CHL, Canadian Hockey League, with the OHL, the WHL, and the Quebec Junior Major Hockey League. Now, there has been lots of weeks on the topic of the Q. They are the biggest benefactors in this whole exchange coming forward. American kids are willing to play, and they get that playing time. They will do the travel. The Q has the most travel of all, and it's on buses. So it is way more difficult out there. That's harder to attract players. But the reason Americans haven't been going up there as much is because they're going to lose their eligibility to NCAA. So they've gone the United States Hockey League, which is Junior A. Now, Brian Kennedy has a whole bunch more on that in the TSN report. But the numbers are now showing us. I'm ready to share some numbers with you as of today. You guys have been saying, oh, look out. It's a death of BCHL. There's problems. Okay, you know what? It's looking like that. You follow me on my post on X, and you'll see 19 moves have been made as of today to the CHL. 19 players have moved over to the CHL from the United States Hockey League and from the BCHL. Now, 6 were signed before any of this news of the NCAA came out. 13 are new. So that's 13 new players. People are freaking out over 13 players. Now, I'm not going to give you the actual percentage numbers today. 9 are from the Q. 6 are going to the W, and 4 to the OHL. First of all, remember, if a player goes into the CHL, they will have players that need to find another place, and that will be Junior A hockey. Remember, not a lot of players are first-round draft picks coming out of Junior A hockey to begin with. So they're probably not top 6 or even top-line defensemen or goalies, just a heads up. Now, something interesting I've had. Now, you guys ready? I've had a general manager. I've had a director of scouting. And I've also had, okay, get this, I actually also had a co-owner in the USHL reach out to me this week, since we had someone on last week, and I've had 2 texts and 1 email sent to me. And for confidentiality's sake, they don't want their names mentioned here today. Don't want to believe me, that's fine. But what they're saying is September 30th. I did not know this date until today. September 30th is the deadline to register for Hockey Canada to play for the CHL. Why are they being allowed to sign after September 30th? Let me tell you why. And it's mostly coming out of the BCHL, because the BCHL withdrew 2 years ago from the Hockey Canada. So because they withdrew from Hockey Canada, and the players that left from the AJHL last year, who would have been this year, by the way, not last year, but the news got out and AJ got in there right away with Hockey Alberta and Hockey Canada. Hockey Canada has essentially changed their rules mid-season, right in the middle of the season. They've just extended it and allowed these players because they are trying to kill the BCHL. That's the report that they are feeling angry out there because they don't care about the kids and how this is affecting the league. This has been beneficial. The CHL has done well. Now, the USHL, they're not happy about it either, because some of their key players that they have had signed, the only difference is, And if you don't believe they have it in for the BCHL more than the U, did you know there's up to $40,000 to $50,000 transaction fee the CHL has to pay the United States Hockey League, but they don't have to pay a dime to the BCHL. And the BCHL has not complained about that, long as it was prior to September 30th. With the new rule, things have changed. So, guys, this is only going to get more exciting. Tonight, right now, the BHL Board of Governors have met on how they're going to deal with this. And I'm telling you, they will not go down. There will be a change around. And I want you to think about this. 13 players, 19 players. How many out of how many players are playing junior A hockey in those two leagues? You figure that out, and then you come up with 19 and figure out your percentage. Go look at those players. Go look at their stats. Go see how big a difference it's going to make. It's causing a lot of chaos and hectic, and Hockey Canada doesn't care. And I personally, I want it to be known, and I'm going to use this as a platform here on Two Guys in Hockey Talk and our social media to bring the truth out, because I'm frustrated with it. I'm happy for the players. Pavel, we talked about it's good for the players. I think Michael Devellano, he talked about it. Luke Ravel said, hey, it's not bad. But the problem now is the Hockey Canada situation, when they're just allowing you to change the rules mid-season to do what they want to continue, because you have to apply to get into Hockey Canada. And it's gone past September 30th. We're in November. That means they've gone how long? 2 months past. They're still allowing people to sign. This is a lot of politics, and there's some bullying going on with Hockey Canada that's helping the CHL, and the CHL doesn't mind a bit, guys. Anyway, Pavel, I don't know if you have any last thoughts, but that I feel like that's a rant for me. But I promise these three people who trusted me to get this out, I wasn't even going to speak on this tonight, and because they sent it in, I thought, you know what? It's obviously when they're contacting Two Guys in Hockey Talk, they have a plan of what they want to do to get the truth out there. And that's a problem. Media will stifle this if you're a major minor, right? So.
Well, and I think you alluded to it very well. So I appreciate you sharing that. I think what we need to really focus on is this is a bigger story than it really is. And I don't think it's being reported on as much as it needs to be. And I think it is falling more so on some of the other types of social media platforms like us in order to get that information out, because I think this is going to be a big story moving forward into 2025 and beyond because of the ramifications, both positive and negative. And I do still believe that there needs to be more power for the players, for these young people. Talking to myself like I'm an old man, that they need better representation because they shouldn't be taken advantage of. And these organizations, really maybe need to reassess how they conduct some of the business and how they approach scouting, how they approach bringing about players into the game and promoting it within the area that they are functioning in. So it'll be interesting to see.
I saw through two people I know, they sent me an actual post from a board of governor in the NCAA. And you know what interesting? They said they expect within the next 5 years, the Big Ten college teams of football and basketball just come into hockey.
Wow.
Because there's going to be a lot of players opened up, right? When you got all of the CHL now to pull from. So
and just look,
this will be good for the US too.
Once one sport goes, all others often follow to see where it is. So you look at basketball, you look at college basketball or college football, any other sport. It sometimes follows suits in this, but we're going to keep an eye on this. It's been a chaotic thing. There's a lot to divulge to. So I appreciate you kind of sharing and going into it. It's not much of a rant. I think it's a very good information for our fans who love the game of hockey. But I think we should end it on a quick high note. And I think that next week will be a ring-a-ding-ding-dandy, as you like to say. I'm going to repeat myself because we're going to do the Four Nations thing. We appreciate Hart again coming on tonight and sharing his thoughts on PuckPedia. That was really incredible. I'm sure, like I've spent many hours on PuckPedia or previously on That Friendly, but now PuckPedia, doing all kinds of trades and things like that, and it's been fun. but there's a lot going on, and
There is.
we can't cover it all. So what
Nope.
you can do, guys, is you can go check out our website.
Woo!
Our website got articles all the time. So we got our weekly updates. Grant Cummings had a recent update
Yes.
on the Boston Bruins. Great article. We list all the former guests. We're going to try to get Hart up there tomorrow on the website. And we appreciate you guys and all of our sponsors who have helped make this channel grow and become what it is today. You guys
Absolutely.
make this quote unquote job amazing. Go
And
ahead.
next week, we have a former Stanley Cup champion, NHL player coming on. His name is Chris Dingman. So he has agreed to come and join us for the show. So, guys, next week, let's talk to him about what it was like to hoist the Stanley Cup.
Woo! Well, guys, that's it for us. We are here every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. We are on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter/X at RevNev, or myself at hockey_2. We love following. We love talking to you guys, all things hockey. Email us. We got an email. We can reach out at any time. Just let us know. We love hearing from you guys, and thank you from wherever it is that you're tuning in, or if you're tuning in later during the week. We appreciate it. So in the meantime and in between time, Evan,
Keep your stick on the ice.
stay safe and have a good night.
Cheers.